Going to have a session on the pollution and climate change issues and challenges. I think that Dr. Suraj, you can interrupt me any time because if you see that my slide is not visible or if I'm not audible, I hope
Yes,
I
sir,
am audible
sir.
and clear. Okay.
Yeah. Now it is clear, sir.
Well, I'm not going into this presentation when Dr. Suraj told me based on the pollution and the climate change issues and the challenges. I have kept it very generic in the point of view from the industry point of the view, so that I won't say that there are so many learned, distinguished people specializing in these fields, but I would like to highlight certain things as a practicing industry persons who had been working in the chemical industry. Well, lastly, if we see that, any class or any seminar or anything which I take on pollution or environmental pollution or climate change, I feel that the Mahatma Gandhi's words is so prophetic in nowadays times. Uh, Earth has Earth can provide enough to satisfy everyone's needs, but not everyone's greed. And I think if we see back over our decades, actually we have plundered the natural resources, plundered the Earth's ability to recoup itself and give back. Basically, there is enough things for Earth to satisfy everyone's needs, but in the name of development, there was a greed by the mankind so that somewhere our resources and somewhere issues like pollution control and pollution and climate change has come into our dictionary so much, and it is now common words. It was words into the parlance of technical stuff like engineering was years a few decades back. But nowadays it is coming to be the headlines of every newspaper. You see, be it the international news or be it the national news, we see in the technical pages, we see always something on climate change, how it is going to affect, how there is a bleak future coming ahead of us due to the changing climate conditions. That climate tipping point has reached, this glacier melts, there is an anxiety amongst young people, the carbon dioxide, extreme weather conditions. And not only in the international media, we see that in the national media also, we see that in the front pages of our news media, we always see that the issues of Arctic melting, if it is far away from India, but it is causing extreme rains. What is the erratic monsoon rain? We see many of our cities like Cochin, or you see Bangalore, or you see Bombay, or you see Chennai. These are getting flooded with every rainfall. The rainfall is erratic and the rainfall is so huge that the systems on which our cities are based are getting difficult to control it. And even if you come to Kerala also, we know that we are facing something which was not heard in our uh, encyclopedia of development, like 2018 floods, then these landslides. So climate change, there's a great change in the rain pattern. So this is nothing new nowadays. These words have become a common into the everybody's lingua that this climate change is happening and climate change is going to stay. And we see that there are so many, even the 2008 never expected. I come from a place where there was no floods in the last, they said in the last 100 years. But the thing is that in the 2018 floods, it came to our doorsteps, and many places which we never thought that would be coming into the floods was flooded. Uh, Things are changing in a very fast, and the priority to environment has to come back to our lifestyle. Otherwise, we are going to have a very bleak future. Well, when we say what climate change is, like when we say the United Nations Framework Convention or the climate change, it defines climate change as a change which attributed directly or indirectly to human activity. It can alter the composition of a global atmosphere in addition to a natural climate variability over a long time period. Well, before climate change word is so commonly used, the word global warming was more popular way back in the 60s and 70s. global warming is still popular, but the thing is that now climate change is the most prominent term used in the technical fields. And it is said that some of this word was first used by Edward Hanson, an American professor who was in the program of climate science in 1988, as a testimony on climate, 98 testimony on climate change. It increased a broad awareness of global warming and the changes that the global warming can bring into the climate in the international front. And I think that many of that uniters, many of those technocrats have a great role to bring this climate science and the climate change into our everyday lives and see that something is done on this front. Well, if you know that nowadays, we can't say that there was some years back or some decade back, we say that climate change is going to be not real. It is something that is going, that is something invented to be fearful of. But now it is real and it is happening. Well, if you see the climates are changing fast. It's a long-term process over a large area and measured over a long period of time. And these climate change observations are based on an average of many years of weather observation. Even though weather can be termed as a short-term change of temperatures. Well, as per a study of a global climate highlights 2023, a 12-month period ending in January or February will exceed 1.5 degree above the pre-industrial level. So we see that within a short period, we are exceeding temperatures that is much above the pre-industrial levels. So that is something of concern. And these climate change effects we are seeing are more frequent. We find intense drought situations in many places, unusual storms, heat waves, rising sea levels, melting glaciers, and warming oceans are nothing of an old phenomenon. It's a daily in the news in many places. Well, if we go and analyze a little bit on this climate change, the regional weather changes are there, the increasing world temperatures. The combined land and ocean temperature has increased at the rate of 0.08 degrees Celsius per decade since 1818. So it is not that it is getting stagnant at any point. It is rising at a very fast rate. And if we see that many of the studies on the global temperature from 1880, we find that there is no sufficient data prior to that. But the studies by NASA or the National Climatic Data Center or the Berkeley Earth or Cotan and where NASA gives, every statistics is confirming that the temperatures are rising. And we see that from 1951 onwards, the temperatures are rising at a very, very fast rate. And that is what is making the climate scientists worry about. The average rate of increase since 1981 has been more twice as fast. So the thing is that the data is saying that we are not into good times ahead. And we see that every year the temperatures are increasing at a very faster rate. We see in the last 5 years the temperatures were increasing fast. Well, on a commercial way, we say that the AC sets consumption are on a fast, but that is creating another issues. But the thing is that we can't live without AC nowadays. It has become a way of life rather than a fashionable way. Well, the last year was the warmest year on record, and we see that 2025 doesn't seem to be any different from that. Well, 2022-23 was the warmest year on record, but NASA has confirmed that 2024 was the warmest year. And we are looking forward to 2025. And things doesn't seem any change has happened. And maybe 2025 is going to be another record year on which the global temperatures are going to be. And we see even the graph, the thing is that after 1950s and the 1960s, the temperature rise is so fast. So that now the world has started thinking that, okay, there is some problem at our hand, some real problem is coming our way. And that is where the governments are worried, the technocrats are worried, the decision makers are worried, the policy makers are worried, because the policies are not going to stop this. Well, definitely the signs of climate change are there. higher temperatures, there are more droughts in many places, the, the wilder weather. The rain and the snow patterns are changing. The snow packs are getting thinner in many places. The glaciers are melting. The sea ice is shrinking like anything fast. Thawing permafrost. Permafrost is basically the soil converted, the ice in the Arctic converted into the soil, and it is getting reduced very fast. The ocean acidity is one more problem. We are having a great reduction in the fish resources by increasing ocean acidity. The ocean level, the oceans are getting more warmer, and the sea level is rising. The sea level is rising, and it is going to be a critical thing for a state like Kerala, for a country like India, where we have a large coastal line. Well, as we see in the some of the pictures that we see, the signs of climate change are clearly visible. And we see like there was a Malibu fires in the Los Angeles city, says that the area was so humid and hot, and the conditions, means the vegetation has dried up, so it was ready for a wildfire. And we see that this by this Malibu fires, by this Wayanad, and by this Kerala floods, it is going to affect everybody, from the ordinary people, from to the rich, anybody. Economic issues are not going to be a deterrent in our effects of climate change. No matter how resourceful we may be in our monetary terms, the climate change is going to affect ordinary people to the any persons. And that is why this climate change is one areas. And one more thing is that all this, we have seen that a lot of progress, a lot of development in these areas have been distracted overnight. By within few days, we see that the area has changed like anything. And that is why this climate change, which is real and happening, are being advocated even by celebrities like Leonardo DiCaprio's Oscar acceptance. He says that climate change is real. It's happening right now. We have a threat facing our entire species, and we need to work collectively. And nobody on an Oscar level says that climate change or things. And you see Barack Obama's that we are the first generation to feel the impact of climate change. Maybe future earlier generations never felt that the climate change is going to affect us, and we are the last generation that can do something about it. So the thing is that it is now or never. So if we see the temperature, and if by the going progress, if we see that by 2100, this earth will become one more inhospitable place for the human species. Well, there are multiple evidences that shows that the climate system is changing. The glaciers and ice sheets are getting thin, sea surfaces, the ocean currents are changing its frequency, extreme frequency of extreme things are making fire, and the number of hot days are increasing, number of cold days are reducing, and the climate pattern across the world has changed. And we see coming to the some of one of the effects of that, the sea level projection, the NASA sea level projection tool says that many of our coastal cities are going to be, Indian Ocean is rising at a rate of 3.3 millimeter per year between 93 and 2015. And we have a vulnerable coastline. Vizag, Chennai, Mumbai, Paradip, Oka, Mormugao, Cochin, Bhavnagar, Calcutta. We see that by 2010, many of the cities may not be in the maps too. And uh, the thing is that we may see with a time interval of 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, 50 years, but within a time, our next generation is to grow up. We may not have these cities in our maps. And that is one alarming concern that is going. Well, there are so many social impact of this climate change. That is the coastal race. In the coastal areas, we see that these sea levels are rising. So that many a times we see like Wayanad, the relocation of the old towns are going on. Productivity of harvest is going down. The food stuff is getting costly. Widespread poverty is coming back. Diseases, many diseases are coming back due to hot temperatures, and it fresh water is going. Nowadays, every program, everywhere, every marriages, every events, even small programs, we use bottled water. There are more wars. Like we have a war between Ukraine and Russia, and it has really affected many of the things. Like, for example, as in our company, all our shipping from the international lines are coming, they are coming to the Suez, but earlier, due to the war now, the ships are not coming to Suez and they are having a lag of 2 to 3 weeks. And fertilizer productions are getting affected, and it is going to in part affect the productivity, the harvest seasons, and all those things. There's a loss of capacity to work due to the heat. The human output is less. And we see that the sea levels are rising primarily by the global warming. There is an added water that is coming from the melting ice sheets and glaciers and the expansion of seawater. And these oceans, when they carry a lot of heat and travel wide, they change the climate of different areas. And that is why we see that the uh, oceans that are changing the geographic borders of many places. And this is the reality that we are facing. Well, we see that one of the alarming things by in the times that has come is that we being a coastal area, the red areas are critical. The land is at risk. So by if you see by 2050, the projections are that many areas where the developed or development that we see today may not be there. So the thing is that the sea level rise is going to be one of the critical things. I'm sitting in Kochi, but the thing is that the, the rise of sea level in Kochi, we don't know. It's in the coming times. In this and 2050 is not only 25 years away. It's nothing that it is when we say 2050, it is nothing very far away. It is in our lifetimes, maybe the lifetime of many of our younger generation. So the thing is that this is a rising threat we are facing. And if we see the satellite images from 2001, 2007, 2015, 2009, we see that there is a shoreline shift in the islands of Bolgati, Vallarpadam, and in Waipin area after the tsunami, even that if you see clearly that the borderline has shifted. So what we say in the coming years, in the last 18 to 20 years, really this climate change is changing our borderlines, our concepts of city, the development. You know that the Kerala is a very land short space, and every inch is very costly. But if this rate of climate change is there, we are having an alarming future in the coming days. And we see that the emissions also from the different modes of transporting are increasing very high. We see that like we may be happy that domestic flights have increased, but with the domestic flights, the CO2 emissions are increasing, buses are increasing, domestic rails are increasing. So the thing is that these are certain these are certain factors or certain things to ponder on, that how our development is affecting fast our uh, uh, we may say that a very transportable country we have become a transportable place, but that is going to have a great effect on the our emissions. In fact, we see that compared to many of the states, countries like USA, Canada, China, and Japan, our emissions are per capita annual GHS emissions are led. Uh, so we are taking pledges that we will be taking, and but our um, emissions are increasing fast, because as we are getting developed, our emissions are getting very fast. And once these emissions are getting fast, and we are not thinking now and acting now, it will be difficult to reach the sustainable goals in the coming days. And what we are talking about the scenarios now is that these are two scenarios. On one side, you see the low emission scenario and the projections for the medium emission scenario. Now we are having the high emission scenario, but we are just discussing that with a changed control on the climatic control, and with means with our political system being generated, how much is going to be the temperature rise? By a low emission scenario, a 1.5 or nearly 2 degree can be raised. Even by a low emission scenario in the coming even by a low emission scenarios in the coming days, our temperatures are going to up to 2 degrees centigrade. Even by a medium emission scenario, it may go up to 3 degrees centigrade. So these are very alarming things that is going to come in the coming days, for in the coming in this decade. without the next decade, without the next century coming in, we are having some issues. And some of the pictures of these floods in 2013, we see that places like Uttarakhand were destroyed, landslides, and all those things. Means, and it has become now nearly every second year or every year we see that these are again after the development we again put in, it is again coming back. So this climate change is there, and even the well, Kerala 2018 Kerala floods, as we know that it changed and shook our conscious as a nation, as a means as a state that even to be, with the resilience of the people and the resilience of we came back, but every year is passing with the threat of the floods in many of the regions and many of the lower coastal areas in the state. Well, this flood toll and damage, we know that there's a human loss. There's a huge human loss are there. Many of the districts like Idukki, Palakkad, Ernakulam, Thrissur were worst affected. Many people were killed. Our dams are old dams, and the safety of the dams are concerns. It is even you live in flat or anywhere, these type of floods are going to affect the people living there. And we see that the rainfall is decreasing in Kerala at a very drastic rate too. And we are seeing that in the 2018, 2019, 2020, every year we are having a climate crisis. Every year we are having a new crisis coming ahead unexpectedly. So it is not that we are insulated. And we being one of the most literate states of the nation, we should be in the forefront to create an awareness on the climate change. Well, after a beautiful district like Wayanad, before and after, will clearly say that what was the drastic level of damage that this climate change is bringing into our near and dear. Well, the losses. If you see the losses that is coming and economic loss in billions and billions of dollars, we see that there's not a single year from 1991 to 2022 has passed without a loss, a huge loss because there are disasters. Every year we are having constant disasters in the form of flood, storm, earthquake, drought, glacial lake outburst. So the thing is that there's a lot of economic loss also going on for these natural disasters. And if we see that because of the floods, the earthquake and extreme temperatures are low, but the storm, earthquake, when we see that industrial accidents are only giving away the 0.7 per part of the graph in an economic loss in the natural disasters. So natural disasters are getting, and that is why the government is so worried about this climate change perspective, because it is taking a lot of our development and wasting a lot of our development. It is not that in India too only these natural disasters of climate change is happening. It is happening all over the world. But we are indifferent with our development. You see a clear the relationship between the development index and the other state-wise natural disaster. We see USA, China, India. But when we see some of the countries which are not that developed, the natural disasters are low. So the climate change is really getting into our development saga. Well, these greenhouse gases, we will look later. The annual greenhouse emissions by the sector, we know is increasing. We have power stations contribute 21%. Industrial processes also contribute. With the industrialization only comes the development. So industrial processes are playing a great role. Transportation is one more area, the transportation fuels. So this annual greenhouse emissions by the sector-wise, if we see from even residential and commercial areas, when we see 10%. From the industrial and processes is only 16%, but from the residential, commercial, and other sources, we are having 12%. Even agriculture byproducts, 12.5%. So the thing is that it is not that our climate change is empowered by certain sector. All the sectors are playing a major role in changing our climate scenario. When we see that how it is going to affect, the greatest emissions are by the developed countries, but the vulnerability is going to be faced by the less developed countries, because that is what the world is worried about. Because the thing is that developed countries have contributed to those who contribute the lean gases emissions. But the thing is that the vulnerability is going to affect the, if you see the red in our things, you see that the many of the places, the emissions are low, but the vulnerability of our getting impacted by the climate change is huge. So we are having very ambitious projects like net zero carbon, because carbon dioxide is one of the major greenhouse gases, and we are going to reduce it. And that is a climate pledge that we are taking. But how much it is, and we see that the infrastructure is losing and lost, as earlier discussed, because 70% are lost is because climate-related disasters. And for the first time, we see that we are developing on one hand and losing our development on the other hand due to the climate change. Well, we see the monuments like Taj Mahal, the pride of our nation, is all discolored. If we see, if you have visited Taj, it is, the air is getting polluted, the emissions are there, and the Taj Mahal is in a danger of discoloration. And if we see, it is not a phenomena compared to India. Like if you see that in the one of the famous landmarks of Mexico, Angle of Independence, over the last 9 years, that monument, which has made mean year, I mean, hundreds and years back, has sunk by 9 meters. So the thing is that 23 new steps have to be added to for the people to assess it. So this climate change is not only happening across our country, but all over the world. We have to find solutions to stop climate change. We have to embrace a cleaner future. That is that the leaders tomorrow's change in, we have to build up a new generation of change innovators. We know that the causes of the climate change generally is generating power, manufacturing goods, powering building, producing food, and using transportation, cutting down forests. We see that many of our development is based on cutting down the forests. Even when we build houses, we cut down many trees, but that means trees are not coming back. We are consuming too much because the development and is the economic price that is going to be there. We are consuming, we are consumeristic. Well, we see that because of this change, the worldwide, the United Nations have taken a leadership on it, and we have now having sustainable development goals. As we say, the first only we see that in June 1992 in the Brazil, 178 countries adopted Agenda 21. Then came this 8 Millennium Development Goals to reduce the poverty by 2050. That was the next step United States undertakes, because the member states unanimously decided for that Millennium Declaration, and by poverty was to be reduced extreme poverty, not poverty, the extreme poverty by 2050. Then came the word sustainable development, but in the sustainable development, by this start of this century, the word called sustainable development came. The Johannesburg Declaration of Sustainable Development came in September 2002, that the global community has to be committed for poverty eradication and environment. And one of the very progressive steps that United Nations Conference on Sustainable Development happened in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, in which in 2012, they signed on the future we want. They have developed a lot of engineers, a lot of technocrats, a lot of climate scientists, a lot of intelligentsia, a lot of planners, a lot of managers have helped the UN to build the sustainable development goals rather than the 8 Millennium Development Goals. The Sustainable Development Goals is the platform on which all our sustainable development is based across the nation, across the continent, continents, and across the world. So the thing is that the world we are changing is based on these sustainable development goals. Well, so a little bit regarding that, the Paris Agreement that was signed 2015. The many countries have taken that in the subsequent adoption by 2030. We are going to reduce many things. We are going to bring a change in the climate change, which is happening now. So the 17 sustainable development goals have been identified and been agreed by many of the countries, and climate change is one of those sustainable goals that we are. So before going into that, what is sustainable development? Well, sustainable, the word as it says, something which can be maintained for a long period of time. And development is progress or economic development. But sustainable development is a development we need, which meets the current generation without compromising the needs of the future generation. So the thing is we have to maintain our development on a long term, and we also have to develop economically, and that is why the sustainable development goals. So coming to sustainable development goals, why sustainable development goals? Because we have the world over, we have to save billions of dollars. India is a part of that global coalition of disaster risk reduction. And we know that nowadays 50 disasters are occurring every month. The climate change is getting fast that around 50 disasters occur every month across the world. And we are a connected world now. So the thing is that now the government's focus, the United Nations and the nation's focus, the state focus is basically on the sustainable development goals or the global goals, in which there is no poverty, zero hunger, good health, quality education, gender equality. Even the quality education has become one of the sustainable development goals, clean water, affordable energy, decent work growth. And if you see the number 13, the climate action is going to be one of the focus areas for the world over. Responsible consumption, production, life below water. First time the life means people are concerned about oceans, life on land. Then in making of institutions, partnership for these goals. It is understood by the world over that we can't sustain in a climate change world alone. So we have to work together, and this is the sustainable development that is going on. So the again, it is highlighted the poverty, hunger, health and well-being, education, gender equality, water and sanitation, energy systems, work and economic growth, industry and infrastructure, inequality, sustainable consumption, production, institution. So these are the 17 sustainable goals on which all the government plans are nowadays made. So, and climate change is one of the sustainable development goal. In fact, the state government and the central government is seeing that this sustainable goal is known to the all the persons who are going to make a change in our world, who are going to come and make a change in the coming days. So how is going to climate change impact our society? As we know that climate change, we have seen that they disrupt the natural, economic, and social systems, food supplies, industry supply chains, like our industry supply chain is affected. Financial markets, we say the share markets tumbling, the share markets coming down on the news of happening anywhere. The infrastructure is damaged. You see the wars, the damage, the wars which has happened in across the world. The infrastructure is damaged. Cities are damaged. Human health and global development, extreme events, health foods, loss of cultural identity, relate the climate change, and millions of poor people are facing extreme situations because of this climate change. Well, if we see what are the drivers of global warming, there are natural causes, there are man-made causes or anthropogenic causes, and we see generating power, because if we see in India, most of the power is generated by the coal industry. 70% of our generation is by coal. Manufacturing goods. Without manufacturing, we can't progress. Then mining processes, cutting down of forests. Our green belt is reducing every coming year, producing food for the billions and billions of our population, powering buildings, getting energy for our people. If we see the power fluctuations, the voltage fluctuations, so we have to build, we have to power a lot of building in the coming developed scenarios. The industrial and domestic waste is going to be a great thing. Well, we know that there is nothing permanent except change, and change is always chaos. All our development, all our positive things, all our development is having with chaos. And that chaos is what we term in a different way, like pollution or something. The things emissions. This chaos is creating the chemical means the climate change across the world. And if we see the effect of industrialization over the years, the CO2 emissions are increasing very fast. Industries who are contributing, the world over industries got contributing a large amount of CO2 emissions into the uh, atmosphere. Well, we know that what is environmental pollution. Environmental pollution is nothing other than the contamination of physical and biological components of that atmosphere system to an extent that normal environmental process adversely affected. It can be anything of any concentration that is injurious to environment. That is what Environmental Protection Act says. If we say there's a lot of acts that has come after one incident in India, we see that environment pollution in a very simple way is the presence of in the environment of any environmental pollutant. And we see that industries, the stacks are putting up into the air a lot of uh, pollutants nowadays. Well, these emissions of pollutants in the air can result in changes of climate. That's very clear. Greenhouse gases, ozone in the atmosphere warms the climate. Well, when we say the word pollution, even though these are nearly very closely interrelated, pollution and climate change are closely interrelated, often stemming from the same sources. The thing is that which started which, it will be becoming difficult in the coming. It is a vicious cycle. And nowadays, these both words have come as the two sides of the same coin, because we see that with the pollution which is happening across the system, ecosystems are affected, ecosystems are affecting the natural vegetation, and the climate is changed. This again generates pollution. So it is a vicious cycle in which we are not clear, has the pollution changed, made climate change, or has climate change now contributing the pollution? So it is a vicious cycle that is happening, in which we are supposed to have the heat effects, the food security, the ozone formation, the crop loss, toxic effects of these pollutants. And if we see the emissions or pollutants in the air can result change in the climate. But these greenhouse gases are often referred as climate forces. Ozone formation in the warms the climate, but the cooling effects on the climate are getting reduced. Well, coming to our personal lives, we see that we are developed, we are fashionable as human beings, we want to be fashion. But the thing is that our sense of development, our sense of fashion is contributing a great to the carbon emissions, to our change, the climate change. It is very surprising to note that the second biggest consumer of fashion industry is the second biggest consumer of water and responsible for 10% of global carbon emissions. It is more than the international flights and maritime shipping combined. So if all the flights and the shipping are going on, but the fashion the industries consumption person in the fashion industries emissions are 10% of the global carbon emissions. We may never think that such a great scenario happens in such a beautiful fashionable world that we see around. Well, as per the UN data, the textile manufacturing alone is skyrocketing by 60% by 2030. So thing is that whenever we change clothes, whenever we change things, whenever we go for sudden requirements of fashion, somewhere on an individual level, we are also consuming and these new fashionable products, and giving our contribution to the global carbon emissions. Well, water is one of the resources that is getting from 79 billion cubic meters of water are used by textile and clothing in 2015, and now it has increased by multi-flow. If we see that 2,700 liters of water is required to produce one T-shirt, but that is enough drinking water for one person for 2.5 years. We need only 35 liters per day. So the thing is that there is something that we can do on our front to see that this climate change is reduced. But the thing is that this awareness, the creation of this awareness may at least slow down the things. Well, we are used to a thing when that is why the Mahatma Gandhi's words become more prophetic, that we see that 0.265 liters of water is required to make a small napkin that we use and throw every day. When we see that our daily napkin consumption in different areas, we see that very astronomical figures of water are going into making 450, 4,500 lakh napkins, and it is nothing when we compare to many things. But that much water is enough to fill 477 Olympic-sized swimming pools. But it is enough to give water for 3,93,000 people. So the thing is that because of our change of our development things, there is a great effect on the thing. But the thing is that this is also required. So mitigation is one area that is thing. Nowadays, we only use bottled water anywhere, any institutions, any industry, anywhere we go, we are going on this bottled water. But the thing is that 5.3 liters of water is required to produce a single-use water or a soda bottle. A lot of water is being wasted for filling our thirst of 1 liter of water, and that is the very thing. And the PET bottles that we make and fill this water takes 450 years to decompose. plastic bottle of PET is taking a fee for 15 years. So we are contributing to pollution in a very unknown way, in a very submissive way. And we see that nowadays, any statement, everybody's let's you see the Crocs. Crocs is a very new fashion statement. But if we see that every Crocs that is made into the world, they are having 2.56, they contribute 2.56 kg of CO2. Maybe we can't go for, the only thing we can do is that we can buy one piece of Crocs rather than going for two or three pieces pairs of Crocs, uh, depending upon the color. So the thing is that there is a small way that even individuals can contribute to this. Now we will go into the different types of pollution that we are facing across. What makes our air dirty? We see the vehicles, they emit carbon monoxide, sulfur dioxide from the power plants, household fires that emit ozone, nitric acid, ammonia from the factories, nitrogen dioxide from the crop burning, municipal waste, the VOCs from the municipal waste, the particulate matter, the dust that is coming up in it. These are pollutants linked to climate change also. Well, we see that in air pollution, there are four main types of pollution, such as mobile sources, such as buses, cars, the stationary sources, that is the industry, the power plants, the area sources like agriculture, cities, wood burning, natural sources. So all the sources are contributing to the air pollution in their own ways. Well, when we come to the statistics, the World Health Organization, air pollution is killing 13 people each every minute due to lung cancer, heart disease, strokes. We can be one of them. 9 out of the 10 people breathe polluted air, and we know we may fall into that 9. So the air pollution statistics are getting in a very dangerous way in our lives. Well, the emissions are increasing, the VOC, sulfur dioxide. If we see in developed places like Europe also, 790,000 excess deaths are due to ambient air pollution. Well, in the developing and the developed countries, we are in the underdeveloped countries, we are not going into the statistics because it's more dangerous, it is more fatalistic in its view. So even very in European countries, so we see that around 8 lakh excess deaths are happening due to the ambient air pollution. So it is not that it is a phenomenon that is happening across our countries, it's happening across the world. Well, what's in the air? The ground, ozone, smoke, they are increasing the cardiovascular disease, the allergies are increasing, acute respiratory illness are there. And if you see the younger generation also, the chest pains, the premature deaths, increasing temperatures, allergies are increasing, changes in weather. So this air quality, when we see the pollutant emissions, they are natural pollutants as we see from the cities, the stationary pollutants, the airs. So we see in the world a lot of pollutant emissions are happening across the industry, across the our daily mobility into the many places, our agriculture practices. Well, what happened is that these natural and human generated emissions, they transport, go into the atmosphere, come chemical reactions and come back as deposition back into our natural resources. Our natural resources get depleted. This is a cycle that is going on and creating the climate change for us. Well, if we see some good effects, COVID is a bad thing. It isolated the world. But the thing is that in COVID-19 also focus certain things. How our development, we see that in 2009, the number of flights at the air traffic in Europe and 2020. So a lot of air traffic, a lot of mobility of the people were reduced. We see that in certain times in like in countries, in places like New Delhi, which was in the top of the world's most polluted city list, a 60% reduction in PM 2 point particulate matter 2.5 levels was there in the same period. Major cities which has affected world's worst air pollution has reductions of deadly particulate matter by 60%. Well, this is not only across New Delhi, but it was across the world. So thing is that this particulate matter of 2.5 in diameter is considered particularly dangerous because it can go into our bloodstream and create problems in other organs and lungs and have serious health risks. Well, the pictures clearly tell it what is our conditions. On the right hand side, you see the COVID times of the same monument, and on the left hand, you see the normal monument. And if you see if you have been watching the news in the Delhi today, in the last 2 days, so many trains were late, flights were diverted because of this in the industrial, the lower visibility and the smoke and the fog in the country. And if you see the same during COVID times and before COVID times, we see that there is a clear distinction that our human activity is creating a lot of issues in the climate. And the thing is that the nature is not getting a time to recoup it. At least the COVID time, which was a dangerous thing for everyone and was very one of the worrisome things of health, at least focused on one thing that we are misusing this world, we are misusing these sources of this world. And if you see, it is not only in India, it is across London. If you see the pictures on the left and the right, we see that within 1 year, the natural way of recouping of nature has happened. But until and unless we don't give a rest, we don't create it a reduction in the climate change scenarios, we are going to have a very bleak future. Well, in the same like India Gate, the same buildings which was posted by taken photos on the top and the bottom, we see a marked difference in the quality of the air. It is a Milan, Venice, New Delhi, world over, you see that there was a difference in the COVID times in the air quality of the air. So very clearly, this air pollution is creating a problem in our climate change. As we know that 16%, there are many things we know that many of the countries which are having, we are in a very developed world. We may be think that 16% of the global population is still not having mobile broadband networks. We may be surprised to live in that place. Even many of the places like African countries or low-income countries, there are so many constraints. The GDP is fast growing in Asia, and industrialization is creating a lot of jobs in our sector in Asia and India especially, and China. And that is why our air is getting more and more polluted too. And if you see the picture of the aerosol optical depth, some of the studies say that in the last year, the 2020, the previous year than that, because of the thermal power plant emission, the vehicular emission, the core residue, the open biomass burning, the solid fuel and the waste burning, you see that across India, we are having a very high level of particulate matter of 2.5. This high aerosol means that the salt dust, the dust, sulfate, black and organic carbon is going into our inhalation systems, and a lot of respiratory issues are going to come up. And even household, there are a lot of areas where the gases and the clean energy is not. So a lot of 3.2 million people are prematurely dying those household air pollution. We think that our households are safe, but household air pollution is creating by corrosive solid fuels with wood with polluting stores, open fires and lamps. And on the other side, you see by death by stroke, heart disease, pulmonary disease, lung cancer, lower inspect. There is a need for clean air. That air is getting worse day by day. Well, from the industry, if you see the nitrogen dioxide pollution from traffic, and that is why the government is focusing on electric vehicles, power plants, industry, or agriculture. They are increasing the asthma. If you see, the kids also are having now asthmas because the air is now not clean. Well, we have to improve. There should be public transport system, safe walking, cycling, but this can mitigate the climate change a bit. Well, coming to the greenhouse gases, we all have learned it, but a small reflection into what is the greenhouse effect. Well, as you know that the greenhouse, the Earth's heat waves are coming. The Earth heat waves are coming into the Earth, and it is reflected back. As sunlight reaches the Earth, it is reflected back. Some energy is reflected back. Some is absorbed and radiated as heat. But with the increase of these greenhouse gases, this is holding this energy in the Earth's atmosphere, and Earth is getting warmer. This greenhouse affecting is creating a lot of issues in our climate change. Well, as we know, so the small changes in the atmospheric concentration of these greenhouse gases is going to have a great change in the Earth's temperature and climate. Well, what are the atmospheric pollutants that are coming in? Carbon monoxide, carbon dioxide, nitrogen dioxide, sulfur dioxide, ammonia, VOCs, ozone, POPs, persistent organic pollutants, particulate materials, heavy metals. Most of these are the atmospheric pollutants that are coming into the industry, coming from the industry and coming in different ways from the different sources of our development. Well, we know that air pollution in India is a very serious issue. Out of the 30 polluted cities, 21 are in India. 13 of the world's 20 cities are having high pollution rates. 51% of the pollution is caused by industrial pollution, 27% by vehicles. Well, these national air quality index that the government, well, some of the statistics, going by the statistics, many of the air polluted countries, Delhi, Faridabad, Ghaziabad, Patna, many of the North Indian states are having a lot of pollution issues. And there's a lot of amount being spent, but there's a very marginal improvement. Like this is a 2022 ranking. But if we see in the 2023 also, the top 100 most polluted cities in the world, we stand in many places. 83 of the world's most populated cities are in India. So these are very disturbing statistics that are coming into our forefront that like Bengusurai, Delhi, many of the countries that are like China is getting back. But the thing is that 83 countries or world's 100 most polluted cities are in India. So it is time that when we go on a faster development lane, we think, well, we see that these are the statistics of the PM 2.5 level of cities in India and the neighboring countries, and we can understand that definitely there is a lot of particulate matter in many of our cities, and we are not in a good times. And there's a lot of gases are being emitted, like organic compounds, nitrogen oxides, sulfur dioxides. These occur naturally in the environment, but with the fossil fuel, burning fossil fuel, power generation, petroleum refining, and manufacturing, our development indexes, these are getting in a big way into our Earth's atmosphere. And one of the things that is happening when this goes into the Earth's atmosphere is creation of the acid rains. As we know, there is sulfur dioxide from the industry, the nitrogen dioxide from the industry, SO2 and NOx from the industry are going and making nitric acid and sulfuric acid and coming back as acid rains, and is destroying our population. Chemical industry in India is now at a very, very fast rate, increasing at a very fast level. And you understand, we can see that by means by the next year or this year, we will be having a 304 US billion annual rate of 10% growth. So chemical industry, when chemical industry, we can say is the sixth large. India is now the largest producer of many things, like we are the largest producer of dye, we are the fourth largest producer of agrochemicals, dye stuffs, culinary industry, even fertilizer industry, we are in the second in the world. So a lot of chemical industries are coming in across the India. And once the chemical industry comes, there is a lot of atmospheric chances until and unless we don't control it. So the thing is that there are feedstock changes, natural gas, coal, biomass, syngas generation. So thing is that a lot of chemical transformations happen in the industry, and the chemical industry plays a great role in changing reducing the pollutants that go into the means our air. We know that we are one of the biggest crude manufacturers in the world. Now we are taking all type of crude and distilling it and making it gas, petrol, naphtha, kerosene, diesel, bitumen, oil. Our development is based on that. But it is not that with these pollutions, they are not controlling measures in the pollutants in industrial establishments. All the gases pollutants in the industry are now to be absorbed by liquids, solids, combustions of the particulate pollutants, gravitational settling chambers, cyclone separator, fabric filters, electrostatic precipitators, wet collectors, and scrubbers are there. And there is a lot of research and lot of money that is going into the controlling measures of highly polluted industries, because nowadays you can't pollute the atmosphere, you can't send any emissions out. When we see a little bit what is the pollution control technologies that have come, we see in industrial emissions from the power plants, steel, building material, the main pollutants been SOx, NOx, particulate matter 10 and 2.5, mercury, desulfurization technology, denitrification technology, dust collection technology, multi-pollutant control technology. These technologies have been integrated into the industry and seen that technologies have come in which we have reduced the pollution controls. Like for example, in the sulfuric acid plant, this we see a very simple contact process in which we have a lot of some SO2s may be emitting into the atmosphere. But the thing is that we have to have scrubber efficiency, and all our emissions are now checked before releasing into the atmosphere. So the industry is progressing in a very way, like we are having continuous emission monitoring systems. It is now statutory that all the industries have continuous emission, real-time continuous emission monitoring systems. And nowadays, so the industry's emissions in the atmosphere has reduced very much. So any change in our emission systems or any parameter change or a breach in our emissions, we will get a closure notice directly from the pollution control boards. So technology is changing and industries are getting more and more. For the last around a decade now, the emissions are being monitored, the effluents are being monitored. So the industry is in a part. As we know that Industry 4 is that we have changed from a mechanization to a cyber systems. A lot of Internet of Things, AI has come into our systems, and the industry is changing fast. But there are many challenges that are faced by the climate crisis, the water making water clean and accessible, providing enough food. So we have to make more and more uh, fertilizers, more chemicals. Handling solid, liquid, and gas effluents is still a change. Handling e-waste is one of the biggest challenges. Handling health, safety, environment. The environmental challenges in the industry can come from accidents, normal discharges, and operational transportation. Well, we see why it comes from a chemical disaster or accidents is that if we say there is I will say as a four unique P's in a chemical disaster. The potential of a chemical disaster can be huge. So many people can be enwrapped in it. The price that we have to pay and the pollution that is going to be created by a chemical disaster. And that is why the world is more focusing on the chemical disaster reduction in the chemical engineering field, because any disaster in a chemical company, the economy may be shattered forever. And if you recognize this sculpture is from Bhopal, which changed the conscience of the world and changed the way we think on industry. Some of very sad pictures of the Bhopal gas leak and that aftermath. It happened in December of 1984, nearly 40 years back. 42 tons of poisonous metal isocyanate gas have escaped. And it is the world's industrial disaster. And this statue was made by Ruth Waterman in its site of the wailing. This is called the wailing mother. The thing is that still people are having problems. So, and chemical disasters are something which we can't afford. So the technology, the engineering phases, the safety engineering has geared up and changed to see that leaks don't happen, the emissions don't happen, effluents don't happen. But still, we see a world in which there are so many man-made chemical disasters. If you have read in the COVID time, the Vaisak styrene gas leak has happened. 2010 drilling rig explosion has happened in Deepwater Horizon, so having a greatest oil spill. Indian Ocean in 2020 saw the state of environmental emergency because Japanese owned ship, it went into spilling tons of fuel. We see that these are the world's best countries who are having the state of art technologies. So the thing is that in the transportation of fuels and the holding of industries, anything can happen. In 2016, uh, in Russia, we see the Daltikian River was red. Catastrophic oil spill in Siberian city in 2020. Colorado, in America, we see that in Mexico's border, we see the Animas River has been the color changes color. So the thing is that now in back nearby, we see the refinery fire, the 2000. Every chemical disaster is going to bring more and more emissions in the atmosphere. So control of the emissions, control of the safety of the chemical areas, industry is going to be one of the biggest challenges for engineers to come in the coming days. Household cooking and with cleaner fuel. These are reduced trash burning, cleaner industrial technologies, cleaner vehicles and fuels, reduced agriculture burning. These are some of the solutions that we can have to have a more solutions for having a good air, increase the better the quality of the air. But it is not only the air that is happening. A lot is happening in the climate, as we say, is water. A lot of things are happening in the waterfront also, in our effluents also, which are coming from different places. There are so many water pollution is happening from the industry, from the agriculture, the fertilizer, livestock, septic tanks, and oil spills. So if we see that the statistics on the waterfront are also not good. By 2020, the India's water demand is projected to by twice of the available supply. we may have a 40% of population having no access to drinking water, and 6% of the India's GDP will be lost. By 2030, the demand of water in India will be twice as much as the supply. So we have a demand supply gap coming up. And we see that 54% of India is facing high extreme water stress. Our lakes are drying up. The water consumer in the irrigation, we are not getting water for the irrigation, so we may not have food in the coming days. Agriculture industry and urban settlements are competing for a very scarce resource called water. And we see many of the survey in the cities of the India, the demand and the supply gap is increasing. In the coming years, this demand and supply gap of the water is going to be a great thing. And even this year, in the last year also, we have seen that there is a water crisis in the southern states of Karnataka, Andhra Pradesh, Telangana, Kerala, and Tamil Nadu. In fact, we from the fertilizer industry are facing a severe water crisis, and our sales of fertilizers are low. Because the thing is that agriculture crops, and that is going to increase the price of the food crops in the coming times. The storage capacity of the reservoirs across the South Indian belt has come down. The statistics are not saying a very, the thing is that our rainfalls have decreased. Well, one of the survey conducted by the Kerala State Literacy Mission say that the pollution is increasing in Kerala, and the 53% of the pollution is solid waste, and the sources of waste of 55% are from houses and hotels rather than the industrial establishment. And the thing is that the water bodies are getting endangered. So we are having in states like Kerala where we seeing that there is an abundance of water. We have a water, we take water for granted. The survey findings are not good to see that we are going to have a water crisis in the coming days. When we say that even we say that Kerala is one of the country, one of the place where sustainable development goals have been achieved well before our 2030. But the thing is that some of the water which we have checked across the Kerala, 27%, there is a variability in the contamination rates. And annual cost of water pollution in India is going to be around 1.7 to 2.1% of the national GDP, because a bad water in the or a polluted water is going to have a great effect on the health sector and the people's lifestyles, and the people's age-related problems are going to come. Well, many of the we see that the water availability per capita in many of our cities in Kerala are also not in a great thing, because the percentages of water supply in many of the things needs improvement. So a lot of thing has to be done on the waterfront to catch up. Well, the main problem with the water pollution is that the non-point source solutions are not highlighted. There are two types of sources. One is the point sources and a non-point source. Non-point source solution are from the industry, unlike from the industrial and the sewage water plants, come from different sources. The point source is a single identified source of pollution, such as a pipe or drain. So any industry, you will have a certain pipe in which you can be focused. But the non-point sources will be coming from different areas like cropland, animal feedlot, and the suburban development, the city streets, the rural homes. So these non-point sources are going to be one of the challenges in the coming times. Well, how to control a pollution in the our industries is that we have a best designed plans and best process licenses, over-designed effluent treatment plans, safety practices and management systems, offsite and on-site emergency systems to handle any emergencies, and capability to increase our capability to handle any emergencies. Well, another thing that we are facing on a big, large scale is a plastic pollution. We say we are one of the biggest, largest market for plastics today, but across the world, 1 million plastic bottles are sold every minute, and 100 trillion plastic bags are used across the year. But nowadays, a lot of this plastic waste are ending up in the ocean. And what we see is that plastic is going to be one of the biggest challenges in this coming generation, which is going to face. Global plastic waste, if we see, it is equivalent to fill a town like Manhattan. So thing is that plastic waste is proliferating on the world level. Like we see the plastic waste wherever we go in the road, wherever we go in our houses, we see that plastic is real, and this crime, these issues from the plastic are going to be big. What is the problem with plastic is the life cycle of plastics is too huge. Every plastic bag, a very simple plastic bag can take 20 years, coffee mug 30 years, plastics to 200 years. Our toothbrush may take 500 years. So thing is that the life cycle of plastics is too huge, and a lot of plastics, because of our development, has come into the life cycle of our environment, that we find it difficult to reduce this menace of this plastic. The National Geographic says that 80 billion pounds of plastic end up in ocean every year, and that is just only a beginning. Many of the Earth, Ocean Conservancy has become a great thing, because every year 100 metric tons of coastal plastic waste are coming up. 8 million of plastic waste is going into the ocean. So a large amount of plastic is going into the ocean, and 91% of the plastic is not recycled. We think plastic is getting recycled, but statistics says that 91% of the plastic is not recycled, and 99% of the plastic causes a recycle change. Approximately 17.6 billion is going, and every moment we speak on this, every minute we speak on a lot of plastic is getting dumped into the ocean sources. So only the global strategy can be, we have to reuse it, redesign it, recycle it. But how far we can use it, but there are challenges on how one using it, how the plastic pollution life cycle is there. Well, our statistics earlier told 18% get downcycled, but 17% goes into the landfills and the oceans of the plastic, and plastic bottles are not recycled actually as we think. And if we see the ocean garbage is filled with now plastics, and plastic is going to be a bigger challenge in the coming times for. And we see so many strategy by so many countries, so who are dependent on oceans to clean up their oceans. So we see the plastic bags, the plastic bottles are the biggest thing that is found in the ecosystem. This is a 2021 study in which the irresponsible behavior and irresponsible way in which we treat the plastic waste goes in ending up in the oceans and creating a lot of problems. And one of the major risk, one of the dangerous things that have come in the recent times is that microplastics are found for the first time in human blood. And this is a very worrying thing, because the microplastics, it is in the last year and the previous 2 years that my scientists have found that microplastics in human blood for the first time. And we see that microplastics in the human blood is one of the reasons why the stroke is increasing, the heart stroke attacks are increasing. And we may not know that these are entering into our respiratory tracts. So, and that is why microplastic pollution is considered one of the dangerous things. So we see that with the plastic pollution, ecosystems are changing, fresh water is getting short, glaciers are melting, floods, storms, and erratic weather, spread of disease, acidic increasing. Well, there are so many goals set to remediate it, to change it, to reduce it, to reuse it. Reuse, recycle, repair is the only way out. We can only reduce, reuse, and remove plastics and from our daily usage, so that we can be reduced. Well, some good things are happening is that in the Paris Olympics, we see that all the seats were made from recycled plastic. You have seen that Olympic medals were made. A lot of recycling is going into industry. All these recycled fish nets and geothermal power inside the Paris Olympic Village. These Olympic Games, carbon emissions were 50% than the previous Olympic Games. It is not that the world is not doing many things. Many things are being used. Many options are being used by the industry, by the people, by the academia, to see that we have a better reduced emissions. But the sustainability challenges that related to the global warming that has come into our ways. So the UN Paris Agreement, we have to reduce this global warming. It is a big uphill task, but how can we reduce it? We see that decarbonization of the global energy system is one of the greatest and important challenges which is going to face in the 21st century. Energy sector is vital for growth, but the energy GDP is growing by 4.5 times, but the consumption of primary energy is growing multifold. The total energy reserves of the dominant fuels are depleting very fast. Fossil fuels account for 85% of the total primary energy consumption. So we have to go in and change into the renewable energies. So electricity is very important for our socio-economic development, but fossil-based electricity, basically like coal, is 60% of what is used for our generation and 42% of our CO2. So the world population is growing the same at a rate of 2.5 times, but energy demand is growing by the rate of around 7 times. So the sustainability challenges that this generation is facing is too huge in the coming times. Well, we have seen that there are certain transition in the energy sector that has happened. First, which replaced wood to coal, oil replaced coal. Now, the world demands that is a global commitment that we replace the fossil fuels with renewable energy. A lot of activity has happened in the renewable energy front also. India is in the forefront of the renewable energy front also. A lot of greenhouse gases. We see that the sustainability challenges, greenhouse gases with 34% from this electricity production, industry 24%, and transportation 14% accounts for the largest greenhouse challenges. The global, if you see the global concentration of carbon dioxide is increasing from the last 40 years, it has been increasing, and it is increasing at a very steady rate. Coming to the sustainable growth, the natural gas has increased. We see that in the over from 71 to 2019, and the graph of this our energy consumption is increasing, and coal, oil, natural gas, nuclear, biofuels, and hydro is increasing at a fast rate. The sustainability challenges is to replace this coal, natural gas, and oil with our renewable sources in a bigger way. So coming to all the problems that we have talked about the climate change, what are the solutions that we are going to have in a climate change? Some solutions are big and require huge investment, but some are very small and free. Ending our reliance on fossil fuels, greater energy efficiency, renewable energy, focus on renewable energy, solar energy, wind energy, biomass energy, geothermal, electric energy, sustainable transportation, sustainable buildings, better forestry management and agriculture, sustainable agriculture, conservation-based solutions, industrial solutions, technological solutions, sustainable transportation, sustainable buildings, uh, a better forestry management. I think some has been repeated. Conservation-based solutions, industrial solutions, technological solutions. These are the only solutions that are going for the climate change. Some of the solutions that we do, like putting up solar things, having a low pollution vehicles, are that what we can use. When we walk, bike, or take a bus, we are also putting our total small contribution to reduce the climate change. Well, we are not supposed to burn the plastics in our courtyard. We have to use less energy. These are some of the things that as individuals we can do. Well, solutions to climate change that will actually make it halt deforestation, commit to rebuilding damaged ecosystems. We can reduce paper waste and go paperless wherever possible. World leaders need to commit to illegal logging operations and goods to commit to reforestation. Embrace what electric vehicles, public transports, individual action is that we can go for public transportation for getting around. But the bigger action is that the policy makers, the industry have to create more energy sources and options of transportation which consume less fossil fuels. Well, India's electricity mix is also improving. We have kept ambitious targets by that electricity generation by in India will reduce from by 50% into the fossil fuels. So we have a coming ambitious targets for the coming years, and many of the changes are happening in our country too. And by 3,000 gigawatt of solar power is going to be generated by 2030. India is going to be one of the leaders, and bigger solar projects are coming up in Gujarat and Rajasthan, which will put up around 300 gigawatts by 2030. So we are tackling the solar challenges in a big way. There are grid upgrades. India is using floating solar and new cells to reduce new technologies in solar energy. And we say that even as we said, 70 to 73% of our coal accounted for it. And but if you see the statistics on the blue, the renewable percentage share of our total generation is increasing fast. And India is have set ambitious targets, and hopefully we may be reaching that range in which where the renewable energy is going to be nearly 50% of our energy needs. Shift to energy, renewable energy in major sources is one of the areas. at our homes, we can go to energy efficient sources, power sources. The industrial sector, like we are focusing on green energy, we are focusing on renewable energy, we are focusing on green hydrogen for our fertilizer production. These are some of the things that we are focusing in our sectors. We have to reduce the food loss and the waste, buy more sustainable groceries, eat the food we buy, reduce the food waste, and the agriculture producers need to switch to fertilizer that contribute to fewer greenhouse emissions. Uh, we can't go for an organic farming because that is not going to sustain our agriculture. But the thing is that we are going for more greener fertilizers by increasing our uh, greener ammonia, increasing the greener ammonia in our fertilizers. Subsidize low carbon alternatives. We have to commit to greenhouse friendly public projects. The urban planners and the policymakers have to prioritize it. Well, individual actions are make a big difference. Governments and NGOs are working together so that these climate change inequalities don't increase the vulnerability and that vicious cycle comes back. So many of the climate change things are happening in our world, and some of the interesting things that I would like to focus is that how plastic is used in roads. Nowadays, plastic is being used in roads to build roads, and India is now focusing on waste materials to see that this plastic is now going into roads, and it will it is a plastic tar road has been coming up in many places in India. We see the cleaning of the plastic waste, the shredding, mini hot plant, then it is road laid plastic and bitumen makes adding of bitumen, addition of plastics. These are all happening. And we see Tripura gets its first road constructed with plastic waste. Well, do you know that Academy has played a great role in inventing plastic roads in India? Who is credited with inventing plastic roads in India? Many of you may be knowing that this particular person is a plastic road maker of India. He's an academician. He is a chemistry professor at the Tyagaraja College of Engineering, Madurai. He is credited with inventing plastic roads in 2001. So the thing is that a lot of developments, a lot of changes can happen from the academia to reduce this issue of plastic. And by this method, around 5,000 kilometers of recycled plastics have been used, and some areas of plastic are going into that. Government of India has not made mandatory that for we have to use waste plastic for construction within 50 kilometers of cities, which is more than 5 lakh. So there's a lot of efforts going on the industry front. Renewable energy, we see that even the flights are going to be made from solar impulse. We see in the 2016, so the first solar impulse 2, a flight which has been powered by the solar power has come up. So the thing is industrial, very, means heartwarming, futuristic things are happening in the industry. Solar powered Airbus have come. Airbus is bringing a solar power Airbus. So it is going to reduce the emissions that are going into the air. And if we see in our India to in the Australia, we see the first solar powered train. The solar power trains are running by 2018 in Australia, and in India is not also lagging behind. In 2017, Indian Railways launched the first solar powered diesel electrical multiple unit train from the Safarjung railway station in New Delhi. So a lot of changes are happening in our energy sector, in our cost for bringing in reduction into our climate changes. There is a national action plan on climate changes, a national solar mission, national mission on sustainable habitat, national mission on sustaining Himalayan ecosystem, national mission for enhanced energy efficiency, water mission, strategic knowledge for climate change, national mission for a green India, national mission for sustainable agriculture. In the academia, industry has to work with these national action plans to reduce our climate change. Solar generation in India is growing leaps and bounds, and in the coming years, it is going to be one of the biggest energy sources in India. A very bright thing is that we see that in within 10 years, from a 3.74 gigawatts, our solar energy has surged into 75 things. So things are looking very progressive in certain sectors. But the thing is that we have to come together and work in many places. We see that in our own Cochin, we see the world's first fully solar airport. Guwahati has become the first railway station in India to run on solar power. So we think that very renewable sources, friend, there are so many things happening in industry. Why not we have colleges running on fully solar power? If the airport can run on solar power, the colleges can run on solar power. So in the definitely, I think in the coming days we will find the colleges, universities running on solar power, and that is going to make a great difference. And that examples may lead into ways in which the students, coming out of that institutions may see that we have more green buildings. Green buildings. Indian Railways is becoming ambitious to become green railways by 2030. So the thing is, from the transport sector, from the energy sector, we are having very positive things coming up to see that the we are having a green world coming up. So the thing is that we are not supposed to lag behind in that. The industry is putting a lot of energy into that. The thing is that on a smaller front, if we can change our 60 watt with CFL bulbs, the LED bulbs, a lot of energy can be saved. And LED lights is lasting 8 times longer than incandests produce lesser heats. So these are small things that we can change. Well, in our personal lives, if we are using the printers also, they raise the bar on energy efficiency. If you say which is the we have to focus when we buy on our infrastructure at our households, our colleges, our academics, we see that the energy of our printers is also going to be one of the bigger things. Well, on a very simple thing, that if you did you know that if you change from Arial to Century Gothic, 30% of inks gets reduced when you are printing your documents. So we need to print our documents, but in a simple change from Arial to Century Gothic, we have helped our, we have contributed our small ways into the climate change. So the thing is that if we see the statistics, reduction of paper, 50 to 5 lakh liters of water is to extract just 1 kg of gold. The thing is that 1 kW of electricity from UK plug socket will take 3 kilowatt of energy to produce. So these are the sustainability facts. The main area of this type of awareness on climate change is to see that somewhere we have to bring this climate change into practice. So energy conservation tips at our home is that we have to open windows, natural lighting, use energy saving lamps, laundry, wash your clothes in cold water detergents, wash full loads, air dry clothes other than a dryer, appliances, 5-star things, using electrical, while using electrical kettle filter. These are many things that we know, but sometimes we find it difficult to practice. But until and unless this becomes a part of our habits, uh, there's not going to be any change in the coming days. We see that industrial emissions are increasing fast from 19,000 to 2022. The graph is going up and up. CO2 from electric car, petrol wagon vehicle war, this would make our decision or should we buy an electric car. But the thing is that how efficient our electric batteries would be is in the coming 5 or 10 years, we can know, because if the electric batteries, if they are going to be wasted out, they are going to be having another ecological problem. Well, India is advancing on the power of night hydrogen. Hydrogen is one of the fuels that the industry is looking forward, the transport industry is looking forward, and we have seen that our Honorable Minister Nitin Gadkari has launched the first India's first green hydrogen advanced fuel, Toyota Mirai, in which he came into the parliament to show that how hydrogen is going to be one of the biggest fuels in the coming times. Well, hydrogen is considered to be the industry's fuel that could fuel a carbon neutral future. So in the coming times, we will see a carbon neutral futures, and definitely like industries like us, when we consume a lot of ammonia, all those things, we are also focusing on hydrogen economy. The ammonia that we use are going to be more focused on a green ammonia. Well, many of the countries, as we told, that liquid hydrogen is going into the aircraft also. Like if you see the Stuttgart, which is one of the Germany's basic, Germany's development hub, we see that the world's first piloted electric aircraft used by liquid hydrogen has gone up in 2023. It uses a hydrogen electric fuel systems. So these are only things that we can emulate and we can invent in India too. So there is many And one more thing is that we have to invest a lot in disaster risk reduction, because as we are earlier seen that disasters can play a great role in changing the economy of any country, and especially in chemical disasters. So climate change can happen, climate crisis can happen with a disaster, chemical disaster, and that is why India is focusing on this disaster risk reductions. So focusing on to the solutions of a climate change that will actually make a difference is that we have to phase out fossil fuels, but how fast we can do it is a questionable challenge. The renewable energy has to increase. The green technology everywhere, green buildings means the green sources of our energy. The electrical mobility, the electrical sources from green sources has to increase so that the fuel consumption on the roads is reducing. We have to curb deforestation. At least we can plant one tree in our lifetime. Reforestation of the soils and reduce meat consumption, because the thing is that meat consumes and puts up. Being vegan is some more better, but thing is that we have to have a balance on it. More plant-based diet is what is needed to have a climate change, curb population growth. Population growth is uh, one area where in developing countries and developed countries are focusing. And carbon capture and storage technologies are another area where we are focusing on many things. So these are some of the areas on which, on a generic way to say that we are focusing our solutions to climate change. I know that this is a huge topic, so I have just gone into the macro way. I think that I'm coming to the end of the session. So thing is that we say, if I ask a question that, are you an environmental activist? How many of you, as I can't see now, because being a session in which we don't see each other. But this is one of the questions I prefer. Are we an environmental activist? And many of the times I ask many of our students and many of the classes we take, many of them feel that it is wrong to be an environmental activist. Only few people say that we are environmental activists, especially when we ask chemical engineers, chemical engineering students, are you an environmental activist? They find a difficulty in saying that they are an environmental activist. But the thing is that basically, I also understand that when we say environmental and activists, it is having a little bit negative shade. But what is an activist? What is an environmentalist? Or we say, what is an environmentalist? An environmentalist is an environmental activist. So, what is an environmentalist? So, I think that one of the definitions I like to share with you is that one of the beautiful quotes is that the activist is not a person who says the river is dirty. The activist is the man who cleans up the river. Unquote Rose Perot. Rose Perot was a philanthropist, billionaire businessman who has done a lot of things for the cleaning up of the river and so much things. So, as chemical engineers, as persons who are working in the forefronts of technology, it is our responsibility to see that we become activists to say that anybody can say the river is dirty. Anybody can say there are no solutions. But we are the people to clean up the river. We are the people to find solutions for the coming generations and this generation's problem. And with this, I think I have come to the end of the session. Thank you all for listening. And before ending up my session, I would like to highlight one more thing is that we learn a lot of things. I always say that I always try to say this, share this Alvin Toffler's quote in the book Future Shock. The illiterate of the future shock are not those who can't read or write, but those who can't learn, unlearn, and relearn. It is time that all of us, irrespective of our engineering things, irrespective of engineering practices, we be in academia, we be student, we be in industry, we have to unlearn what we have learned and relearn, because the world is changing and the world is changing very fast. New threats of, like when I said chemicals, disasters and all, we are facing a new threat of artificial intelligence coming into and playing havoc into systems. So the future is a future is unpredictable, but the only thing we can sustain in the future is by unlearning what we have learned and relearning in a new way. And with this all, I come into the text. Thank you once again.
Thank you very much, Dr. Babu. I think Suraj.
Yeah, thank you so much, sir. Now the session is open for question and answers. If the participants have any doubts, you can ask via unmute your mic, or otherwise you can write your query in the chat box.
Suraj, if we are having something in the chat box, then we can just take one or two questions, and then remaining questions we can send it back to the participants by tomorrow. The answers for that after consult.
Yeah, sure, sir. Sure.
Now I invite Suraj Rajan C for delivering the thank you note.
Yeah, thank you so much, sir, for this very insightful session about pollution and climate change, and what are the issues and what are the challenges that is facing during this, especially this climate change. What is happening by the industries, what actually happens by the treatment plants and all these things. You have covered a very hard session, 1.5 session. And also thank you for accepting our invitation to deliver a talk to AICTE ATAL 6 days online FDP program with your busy schedule. And I would like to extend my heartfelt gratitude for your invaluable support and participation in Faculty Development Program on Climate Change, Impact on Environment. And your insight and contribution have greatly enriched the discussion and learning experience for all the participants. Thank you for your dedication and commitment to addressing the critical issue of climate change. Together, we can make a significant impact on our environment and future generations. Thank you once again, sir. And I hope all the participants got a better understanding about the pollution and the climate change, and what are the issues and what are the challenges that we are facing during this current year. Thank you once again. And as a token of gratitude, we are giving a virtual memento to Dr. Babu Jose, General Manager, Operations, FACT.
Thank you. Thank you for patient listening. I hope if you have any questions, you can call me or send me mail. And thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you for the memento too.
Yeah, thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much.
It has been a pleasure being on this platform. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, sir.
Thank you so much, sir, for your session, and we're truly grateful to have you here.